Hi, BJ.
Hello, Steve.
We're going to actually we're going to stay here for a second. Yeah, there we go. All right. Just checking in the background to make sure we went up. Somehow I'm hearing us out there on the YouTube feed in the background. I'm not seeing us, but that may or may
That
not
might
be
be
the case. Yeah, that'll be really interesting. So I'm up and I'm refreshing, and it looks good. So I'm going to turn it off now. I'm going to assume we're good.
awesome.
Well, anyway, and I'm one of the two people watching, so now we'll go down to one person watching. So if it's Dan Mickle, hi Dan. If it's anybody else, hi. And hopefully, you know, we've missed some of our friends from Africa and other places. But what's going on in Wisconsin?
Not much. It's club season is on, and most of the players, I believe, have found teams. All the players are going to play. The tournaments have started. I know that they're going on all around the state. Our first few events, and we're probably only maybe eight or so weeks away from looking at region championships. I don't know the exact dates anymore, not being on the board, but
Hmm.
that'll be coming up soon.
Well, we're getting ready for boys' season in high school, so that'll be. I'm doing open gyms, but right now the good news is this year's the first year I've had more than one of my athletes in a club team. So there's about 7 or 8 of them now, and that's you can really tell we're going to be much better for it because the bulk of there's a core of guys who have a little bit more skill. So they're in the MLK tournament this weekend. So I've been watching them, and one of the guys
Yeah,
streams
it's a
it.
big
So
tournament weekend. The
yeah,
3 day first 3 day weekend is a big event, so
yeah.
there's a lot going on, I'm sure.
Well, why don't we get our guest in here?
Yeah, let's bring Tim in. So Tim comes to us from we know him through volleyball coaches and trainers. Um, he's been an active member there. I believe, the only charity that we have supported in that group, and it's people tend to slip in a little bit, and because there's so many members, there are 25,000 members, so everybody's got a charity. But this one we have been. Uh, I wouldn't say super active, but it's a place that we've supported, and that's his We Serve First Foundation, which we'll get into. But let's first say hi, Tim, and welcome.
What's up, everybody? How are you?
Oh,
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So Tim and I we finally met face to face. It's one of the weird things about social media is you can be aware of people for some time and even have some conversations, but we just sort of, I think it was even just serendipitous meeting that we ran into you at a place, one of the nights at AVCA, and we started talking about having you on this. I've wanted to have you on for some time, and it was good to meet and kind of lay that foundation. But let me ask you the first question that we ask most people: How did you get your start in volleyball? What brought you to volleyball?
Well, I was a high school wrestler. I played a lot of hockey, but my wife was a coach and player. My wife played at Pitt and then ended up being injured. And her coach at the time was Shelton Collier, and Shelton steered her in the coaching direction. And it was, you don't want to be injured. You don't want to kind of end your career, but it sent her in a direction that took up probably about 30, 35 years of her life after that. And so um, back then we were just dating, and when we married, she took a few high school jobs, and I became the super shagger, as most husbands I think do initially. And then I got into stats a little bit, and In a lot of ways, I'm probably an outsider when it comes to volleyball still after 30 years. But I think that my gift is that I watch and I observe, and I think that of any if I have any volleyball skill, it's actually that observational aspect of it that maybe helps a coaching staff when necessary.
Well, and we probably, I think as coaches, we don't give people like that enough credit. I know I have a father-in-law that's like that. He was, or is very matter of fact about what he sees on the court, and never having played the sport himself nor coached it. And every once in a while, he'll say something like, "Boy, you know what? You may be right about that." I suspect your
Well,
background is more full.
beginner's mind, right? Like that is a big thing. Like we can observe things from an outside perspective that maybe allows us to be a little more, I don't know, suggest something that maybe works. And I think that one of the really cool things about volleyball is today's thought is history tomorrow, and we're on to new things. We're constantly learning something about the sport. So, yeah, I think beginner's mind is a thing, and it really, it can really be helpful.
It's interesting about that. I work in executive training kind of film area, and we have a course we do with some folks who really understand decision making at Yale. And that's one of the first lessons is getting that different perspective. These executives come in, they bring a problem they want to solve, and they want a decision they need to make, and the first thing they do is ask everybody that they know. And he's like, you should be talking to somebody that isn't in your field about what you're thinking to get that different perspective, that the new eyes, right? And it really does give you perspective that you wouldn't have expected, and that's the science behind it is good.
Right? I think there's gems out there. Like we just have to be open to them, I guess, maybe. But
Yeah.
anyway, when it comes to volleyball, I maybe thought it a little bit differently, but continue to learn.
Well, that's the big thing. I think for all of us, that's a big reason that we do this podcast is, or I get, it's not really a podcast, right, Steve? What would you call this?
So
A
I call it a
vlog?
live stream. We convert it into a
Okay.
podcast, and everybody's changing now. Like the podcasting platform we needed to move to is now saying, "Hey, you can post this as a video." So you can do a video podcast and a live stream on YouTube, and it'll convert it to audio. And so that's our next step, BJ, is to make this one less step of processing. Because right
All
now I
right.
put the
Mm.
intro and the back end on the podcast, so we've got to build that into this, so I can just port it over to Spotify and we're done. But we do find, I think, I want to do things that have more visual aspect to them for this, but then that doesn't translate over to an audio podcast very well. So you kind of have to play with that sort of thing.
Right. So, I mean, that's the main goal, Tim, for us
Yeah.
is just exactly what you said is just learning. And for me, bringing in people that aren't the super famous. I mean, we could probably reach those people, but I think there are other podcasts that do that. To me, I like speaking to the nuts and bolts people that are getting stuff done, maybe that not everybody is aware of or has heard of. And along those lines, I guess let's talk about your We Serve First um, group. Just kind of give us an overview about what your foundation does, because I find it to be one of the more successful of these types of organizations.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that my wife Ellen was a coach, and the thing that we first got started in 2015 when her lung cancer um, battle was drawing to a close. Um, we had gotten uh, we had a tough visit with the oncologist, and we realized that time was short, and what we wanted to do was give Ellen a legacy that would live on. And so that was the idea behind We Serve First initially. We were thinking more about kids whose parents were experiencing a medical emergency that um, would make it difficult for them to play club volleyball. And so initially we started out with our first person. We had somebody ready to go out of the starting blocks with that using that criteria. And after that, not much was going on. We couldn't find people really that were in that realm. So we decided to just open it up to kids that needed some help to play club volleyball. And so We Serve First. Well, first of all, Ellen passed away in 2016, in February of 2016, and because we were open and shared our story, we received a lot of support, and We Serve First generated a lot of interest. And yeah, it's kind of a shame that it takes something tragic to make that sort of thing happen, but it's okay because that's what that's what got this whole thing started. And Ellen would be super proud of what we've been able to do since then. We've helped, 125 kids probably in a variety of ways, whether it's through club or camps or whatever. We've been able to help, that many kids in that amount of time um, get that experience, get the club experience that maybe help them. You know, we've had a lot of great stories of kids that have gone on to the next level, and that's wonderful. But that's really not where I want to put my emphasis. I just want to get more kids into the sport that I believe builds the necessary tools for someone to survive adversity. And I think that it's my opinion, and I think that we probably share it, that volleyball teaches those skills probably as well or better than any other sport.
We say it all the time about beach, in particular, that it's not so much a game of winning; it's a game of survival. You you have to you've got to just survive the rally long enough, or you've got to survive the elements, or survive a long tournament day. So I agree with you that that is a skill, particularly in that sport, and the same thing in the indoor game. I think it holds true because of the nature of rallying. But yeah, I think it's. I think you're exactly right. I'm blown away by the 125 kids. I think just the fact that you guys were able to set up this foundation that has helped that many players already, uh, going, even if it's just going to a camp or something that they haven't been able to do in the past, it sparks some interest and might help them start looking at other ways. Geez, I really had fun at that. How do I continue to make that happen? That's I think where your real value is.
Yeah, and honestly, again, it goes back to that. We have at least two or three players that played Division One since we started. One of which probably would have never been uh, on a radar for a Division One coach until she got to play club. And the way things have flip flopped from when Ellen played, high school volleyball was everything. Coaches came to watch high school tournaments and matches, and they probably don't as much anymore because they're busy with their own seasons at that time. But club has kind of taken the place of that, and knowing the value of club volleyball for that reason makes it easy for us to find kids of all skills and say, listen, we need to get you into a club and help you uh, further your career. But it's not even those kids that make me the happiest. It's the kids that just get to play the sport, just get to have a true team experience, and then go on to continue to play high school and club after that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. As I coach now, my goal is to just get a kid interested and involved, and some of it's selfish. I want kids to be able to have, I've had a lifetime of experience, the about the same amount of time that Ellen was in the game now. And I've had a lot of great things happen. I just want that for a lot more people. I want them to be able to jump in and enjoy the sport. Maybe in the way I did or in their own way would be even better, but just to get out and play. So those kids to me, the kids that are benefiting from your foundation in that way are they're really the ones that I would target as well. We're gonna find those Division 1 kids, most of
Yeah,
the time. But
yeah,
you know, the other
for sure.
kids, you know, those are the ones we want.
Yeah,
Right,
they get to
right.
have a
And
go ahead.
that's okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, they have a great opportunity to learn a lot of life skills, and actually, as coaches, we get to learn a lot of life skills. We're still we were talking about it today. Different perspectives of how people learn the sport. There was, I would say, I don't know if it's seat of the pants, but I don't walk in with a minute by minute plan to how we go. And yet, there have been a couple times in the last year or so, my players have come to me and said, they've played for clubs or whatever. Can we have more drills? And I'm sitting there going, oh man, Kessel will kill me. But but it's like, okay, let's do something that's and as a result of this podcast and things, I'm now like, okay, well, we're going to do some hitting, but now we're going to be more deliberate about it. We're going to work at the 5 or 6 different types of hits you have to have because all of you spend 90% of your time hitting the cross court bomb. And guess what? The blocks are set up to take away the cross court bomb. So how do you score? Because that's how we win. We don't score by swinging hard. We score by scoring points. So how do we do that? And it's fun when you see, like, I have one kid now who I asked him yesterday. I said, "What prompted you to come out for volleyball as a junior out of the blue?" He just kind of walked into an open gym one day, and he said, "I don't know. I just did." And he's like the most coachable kid I've had in a long time. Just like soaking it all up, and you go, okay, he must have heard we had a place that was fun to be, and good. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
The thing that and I've heard you say this before in some of the podcasts and things, just the fact that you guys get a rotten deal and your first notion is to figure out a way to give back immediately. I think if people in our sport did that more, I think we'd have a much stronger sport. It just I'm not certain it would occur to me. So I've always found that to be a special thought on your part.
Well, boy, it isn't easy, right? It isn't easy, but most of the good things you do aren't easy. But there's a gift in giving, and I think that that's the key. Is that um, if you want to survive something terrible, do something for somebody that can't help themselves in that minute. It is the most powerful thing you can do because I mean, selfishly, it makes you feel good, and it gives you a little something to hold on to. And maybe I don't know what Ellen's plan was when this all started, but I know she wanted me to stay involved in this community. And I know that she knew that I would need to be busy and doing something. And this has provided that both of those things for me. But when it comes to doing something for somebody else in your most difficult time, I think it's like weightlifting. The harder it is, the more you get from it. And so, I'll hold on to that. Like, and hey, no one knows what tomorrow brings, right? So, whatever it brings, do something, do something special for somebody that can't help themselves, and feel that, feel what that feels like. It's amazing.
Well, it caught on quickly too. You guys received a lot of support almost immediately from the volleyball community, all the way up to national teams. They were doing things, having you, supporting you guys, or having you out to the gym, and just the communication. Um, just another demonstration of how incredible this sport can be if you just reach out. I was it was really pretty touching to watch our athletes take some time, to be supportive of the foundation.
And they always did, like this whole thing with the national team started when Ellen was going through some treatments that were rather tough. Um, the national team was in Serbia, and I don't know what got into me. I was big into Twitter at the time, and I just reached out to a number of people, and I don't know why I picked these three people. I don't even know if it was really Karch at the time, but at Karch Karai, at Alicia Glass, and I believe it was Destiny Hooker at the time. And I just said, hey, how about some love for a coach that's going through something right now? And Alicia grabbed onto it and invited Ellen to be the kind of cyber coach for the national team that weekend as they beat Serbia in five. And she just tweeted out little coaching tips and observations while the team was playing, and it turned into a relationship with the national team that we could never have imagined. And again, one of the really cool things about our sport is how accessible the people who are at the top of the sport can be to those of us down here mucking and grinding every day in the bottom. And it really became uh, kind of what drove us to VCT, and then got us involved more with the national team and with some of the college teams in the area. And yeah, the support flowed from there. At first, it was emotional support for what Ellen was going through, but when Ellen passed, and when her cancer progressed, and then when she passed, it turned into a lot of support for the foundation, which enabled us to do some pretty amazing things since.
Yeah, that's really cool. And probably one of the neatest things for me was running into you this year at AVCA, meeting your new wife, um, and just seeing the you guys had gone through some tough times, and then going and very publicly, your story was out there, but then to see you having uh, recovered so well in your life, and just to see you two together and how much you were enjoying yourselves, I was it was almost as emotional for me in that sense, just the recovery side, and how you've bounced back and have kept this foundation rolling as well.
Thank you. That means a lot to me, BJ. Yeah, Audrey's fantastic. She got into this thing. She stepped in front of a locomotive and has been spectacular throughout this. And the truth is, Ellen and I had the opportunity to have many conversations, difficult conversations, about what the future might look like for me. And one of the things that she insisted upon was that I not spend time alone. So that made things easier for me. And
Yeah.
it was a real gift. It's not easy for someone to do. That's the spirit of a really giving person that understands that there's going to be some challenges for me, and knew that. And so yeah, so I have recovered, and I didn't spend a lot of time down. The foundation and recovering from the difficulty has really propelled me into almost a second life. Like it's there's still aspects of the old life with the foundation, which is great. I needed that, and the sport needs it, but also freed me to be myself and get back out there and enjoy life. And so I can be doubly thankful. I can be thankful for Ellen's foresight, and I can be thankful that Audrey is so understanding of what it is I continue to do in the volleyball community, because her son played volleyball in high school, but beyond that, she has no real connection to the sport. But she's learned to love it, and so I'm thankful for that too.
Yeah, that's she's a incredible person for taking this on. I'm certain it's got to be tough for her at times, but what a strong and uh, well suited person to take that on. I mean, you're somebody in this volleyball community now. A lot of people know who you are and what you're doing with this foundation, and for her to be so supportive, I think is, it's just it's fantastic. It's a foundation we need, and it's probably a model for a lot of other types of giving that people could look to for sure.
Yeah,
What
I
kind of
think I
things have
think that
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I
No.
think that what we um, what we need to recognize is that I don't have to be the only one doing this. And the truth is, stuff like this has been going on for a long time inside the club community, you know, um, quietly, not out front like me. Like we all know that there's kids in clubs that are paying less than premium to play, and that's great because that allows more people to play. And I'm willing to do this job and do this, and maybe create a model that the people that reach the top of the podium can reach back and help out. And I don't have to do it alone. There could be more foundations like this. There could be one in every city that helps kids do this. We've been doing our business um, nationally, really. Like we've supported some people in other places, and that's fine. I'm glad to continue to do it. And the way we find kids is almost as crazy as the story itself. I have some really great stories about how kids have come into our program. Um, you want me to share one now?
Yeah,
Yes,
I was going to say
absolutely.
share a couple of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my favorite one is that I have a niece that lives in Colorado. She lives on a ranch, pretty rural, outside of Denver in Fort Lupton. And she had a running habit, and she would go out every morning and go for a run. And she was out on her dirt road running along in her what is a neighborhood but is really sparse. And she came upon a mother on her front porch, a mile from her own home, just crying. And my niece Chelsea knows this woman and stops and says, "Dana, what's wrong? What can I do for you? Can I help you?" And she said, "Oh, Chelsea, I don't know. My daughter's been going through some real difficulty, and she tried out for club volleyball, and uh, there's just no way I can afford to pay for it." And Chelsea was like, "Well, you ran into the right person today, because I know exactly who can help you with this." And so, for that reason, we've been supporting this young woman in rural Colorado for the last 3 years, and making sure that she gets to continue to play volleyball. Um, she plays for the Flatirons Volleyball Club out there in Denver.
That's
So, and I have another girl, one of our first kids. We helped get into Westmoreland Elite here in Western Pennsylvania. Um, she was the one I told you wasn't on the radar for any college coaches. 4.0 grade point average, held a job so that she could have a car so that she could go to her job. That's how committed she was to trying to better her life. her unfortunate situation was that she was moving from home to home inside her school district, living with families, and having families help her out because her mother had a addiction problem and wasn't able to support her. And we found out about her from her high school coach, and were able to get her into club, and she ended up getting a full scholarship to play at Eastern Kentucky, and finished her college career probably about 3 years ago now, is married and living in Eastern Kentucky. So happy for her too, like just to have been a little bit of a push to put her in the right place at the right time.
It changed her life, quite honestly.
Yeah, truthfully. And she came to me with that news at Ellen's wake, that she had gotten this college scholarship and that she was going to be going to school. And she never dreamed that she'd be going to college at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it's just strange. Like sometimes this feels guided. I don't think I have a better way of putting it than it just feels guided sometimes. And sometimes I'll just let it happen. Just watch it happen, and it's so much fun. And it's things like this, where I get out there and get to talk about it a little bit. And maybe there's somebody out there that hears this and says, well, I got a kid that can't do this, she can't afford it, that maybe I'll be willing to help and able to help. So I'll keep doing these.
Yeah,
Or
serendipity
maybe
is one of
somebody
my
that has the
yeah, go
money
ahead.
to help you.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
no, serendipity is one of my favorite words because it's one of those. It's the running. It's like she ran into. It's like literally ran into
Hmm.
into that situation, and
Yeah.
those are the kinds of it's funny as coaches we all have stories. Like my any player who's played for me in the last 20 years has heard the story of my favorite player because it was my first year and it was this kid who just basically said, I'm, she wanted a job on the team. She had the job on the team. And then we went to a tournament and got shelled. And she said, I want to do this other job, which was not what she wanted to do. But she said, but I can help the team there. I didn't ask her to say, hey, you can do best for the team here. She said, I think I can do best for the team here. Coach, can I play this thing and by making that little bit of sacrifice, it set her up for success going forward. And, it had little to do with me, but I'm like, that's the attitude I need from my players. And it's those little experiences you have. It's like when I thought about, you talked about adversity, going through tough times. When I first met Mike Hewlett was at Impact Training years ago. And he comes in and it was back in the day when he was walking around on his two artificial legs and his,
Yeah.
hooks and the whole bit. And he said, my accident was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear this. And he said, you know what? I can call any coach pretty much anywhere and get him on the phone and ask him for, I would have just been another club coach or another high school coach somewhere, but everybody knows who I am because I'm the guy with the hooks and and it's, one funny story about him is I asked him one day, I said, did you get to just decide how tall you were going to be? And he said, yeah, I did. I said, really? He said, yeah. Well, how did you choose? He said, I wanted to be an inch taller than my brother. So I had to make me 6'6". And he said, but I
That's
found that 6'6" didn't work for me. So I had to have him shorten the legs, but I really wanted to try to make it work.
If only for one day, right? If only for
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. And you're right, because yeah, adversity does put you in a position to have eyes and ears on your story, and it's certainly done that for me. Um, I wouldn't call it the best thing that's ever happened to me, but I would certainly understand that without it, 125 kids might not have gotten the help that they needed. And so when it comes down to it, I'll accept my role in this fate. I'll accept it and do what I can with it.
Yeah, that's a pretty incredible legacy to have. Just that number and a growing number. It's going to continue, I'm certain. Um, you know, because that's what the volleyball community is about. I know you work hard at it to gather funding and to help find these kids that need it. I find it incredible. It's a great it's a great program, and I'm happy to be supportive of it in the ways that I can, for sure. Um,
Yeah, on that topic, what are ways people that are listening to this can help?
Well, weservefirst.org is the website. And if you go to the website and scroll down maybe two panels, you'll see a place where it says you can give. We use the Give Lively um, platform for our giving because we were fortunate enough last year to have gained the attention of Aaron Ferris from Athletes Unlimited. And Aaron played for We Serve First last year, and to have that ability to use Aaron as our as a fundraiser, we had to join this Give Lively platform, and it's really an excellent platform for social giving. So that's where we do all of our fundraising, and beyond that, like we've been doing more. I have a grass court we built here in my hometown in Vandergrift, which um, I thought would be the ideal way to have people in my community remember Ellen. It wouldn't need to be a street name or a statue or anything grandiose like that. She wouldn't want any of that. She'd want a place where kids can come and play. And so we built this grass court in the park that we both grew up in, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to host a high school match there the last 2 years, and an official high school match, which is really wild. The school district was super supportive of us. They brought everything we need to pull it off, and it is almost like the Winter Classic of volleyball. It's kind of that outdoor game that really has caught on. Like, we have food trucks and music, and it's a lot of fun. And we try to play it early in the high school season so that whatever transpires there doesn't last throughout the high school season for these two teams. The past 2 years, it's been Kiski area, who Ellen finished her coaching career with, and Norwin, who I don't know. BJ, have you ever heard of Norwin High School? Do you know of Norwin?
that one I don't. I knew Ellen's, but I didn't know Norwin. What's their claim to fame? Do they have one?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Norwin was a perennial powerhouse when Ellen was in high school. They were coached by a PA Hall of Famer named Sharon Watson. And
Hmm.
Sharon, I think at one point she had 13 straight state titles. And the reason I know that is because, oddly, in that 14th season, no, 13th season, in the 13th season, Norwin was on strike, and Sharon was a teacher, and so she couldn't at that time could not cross the picket line to coach. And so this is how Ellen got into coaching. This is where Shelton comes in and says, "Hey, you're injured. Why don't you coach?" And so Norwin was playing another perennial powerhouse, North Allegheny, at Pitt, and Ellen sat on the bench with the Norwin team and helped an administrator coach that team. By the time it was over, the administrator said, "Would you be interested in continuing to do this for us? We'll make sure that the parents get together and give you a stipend and make sure that you're taken care of." And so she did, and she coached them all the way to the WPIL championship, which is
Wow.
our region. And so soon after that, the Norwin came back, and they were the strike was settled. Sharon took the team back, and weirdly, back then, the girls didn't play their state championship at the end of their season. They waited and played it when the boys played their state championship in the would be the spring, right? Yeah, the spring. And so
Wow.
Norwin goes on and wins their 13th straight state championship. Ellen has a part in it. Um, in the meantime, she gets asked to coach at Plum for the boys. The Plum High School was coached by another local legend, Mike Larko. And so she came on as Mike's assistant for the boys team and was at states when Norwin wins the state championship with the Plum boys. The Plum boys win the state championship that year. And then Mike wants to step back. His wife's she's not well. And so he wants to step back. He offers the girls' job to Ellen at Plum. Okay. And so I'm sorry, this is a long story.
No,
Um,
it's good.
Ellen, as a 21-year-old, takes a job at Plum and coaches them to the state championship and ends up dethroning Norwin for the first time. And it's a bit of payback for Ellen because when Ellen was in high school in 1977, Kiski and Norwin both went to states, and Ellen played at Kiski. I'm sorry, this is so long, but it's worth it. I swear to God. Um, they decide, since they're both in Western Pennsylvania, they'll share a bus out to Shippensburg, where the state championship is.
Oh,
And so they end up meeting in the finals. Norwin wins, right? Because they did have the 13 straight. So Kiski has to ride back on the bus with Norwin after Norwin beats them in the state finals. And to make matters worse, they have to ride through the police and fire truck escort that Norwin gets when they get
There you
to
go.
Irwin, Pennsylvania. So Ellen got revenge for that by ending up being the one who stopped the Norwin streak.
I'm
that is
hoping
Anyway,
there's some
sorry for the long story.
friendships. I'm hoping there's some cross school friendships that were made on that bus ride anyway.
Oh, strangely enough, Ellen's best friend in the world was a woman named Mary Ellen Ferragonio, who ended up taking the job from Sharon Watson when Sharon retired and is still coaching at Norwin to this day. And that's why Norwin is always involved in Pack the Park, which is our outdoor game. So there's definitely friendships there. Sharon Watson is a gem. She's an absolute gem of a person and was probably you'd consider an old school coach who was tough, but her players loved her. And boy, the stories that woman has, just amazing.
what a cool story. I had never heard
Sorry.
any of that. No, that is
Yeah.
that's why we have this thing, is to
Yeah,
hear that
exactly.
those types of stories, the ones that you can't see on TV. You know,
Yeah.
you don't get to hear about the teams like that, because those stories get buried around the rest of the country. You'd have zero access to them. So what a cool thing to have put down in this podcast.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I think
think
for
it's probably on my blog somewhere. I know I love telling that story. It's just one of the most unique things about well, I mean, it speaks to the way women's athletics was cared for back in the 70s. You know, it wasn't really top priority, and that's why they had to share a bus in the in the first place. But just it's a great story, and I love to tell that one. I've got many of them. There was so many.
Well, that's shortly after. I mean, Title IX was early '70s, um, so it's just shortly after Title IX comes in, um, and yeah, I think times were sort of tight then. You did those sorts of things. You shared a bus or a plane, or wherever it was that you were going, as young female athletes.
oh,
You
that was
you
the
had
age of gas shortages, my friend.
well,
Yes,
I
it
that
skipped
too.
a
was.
few gas lines back then.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's just what they had to do to survive and move on. I mean, in our conference, in our high school conference, the local one that I coached in, I think I went to three or four banner ceremonies for teams that were raising banners because they didn't buy them in the 70s. They didn't buy the banners until the 90s. Like, we had a state championship
Yeah.
team. Why is there no banner up for this team? So
Right.
and the other coaches knew I love that sort of history stuff. So we always got to go and play somebody on the night that they were putting the banner up. So that those were a lot of fun for me. So I'm glad to hear that story. That's pretty cool. So what kinds of events does We Serve have coming up?
Well, we just finished in December. We really went out on a limb, and I have to give a lot of the credit to my I'm going to call him my second in charge, Jim Joyce. He came to me. He's a volleyball parent at Kiski area, um, and we've done a lot to support Kiski area athletes and the program there because it was so important to Ellen. But he came to me with this idea, and locally here we have a basketball event called the Cager Classic. It's been going on for probably 30 years, and it's a high school all-star game where they bring in one player from each team and suit them up, divide them up, and play a basketball game. And it's been wildly popular for 30 years. And I don't even know what what charity they support. I'm not really sure. It's not really that important to them. They just want to get these kids out on the court one last time as seniors. And he came to me with the idea of doing something similar for volleyball. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. Let's do this. And so we went to the athletic director at Kiski because we knew that we could sway him to let us use a facility. And he said, well, if you're going to bring in one player from each school, why don't you bring in two? That way you're assured of double the attendance. Like, all right, that sounds good, but how do we make, if we do that, there's 19 schools, that brings us like 36, 38 kids. How do we manage that many kids for, and I thought, why don't we have a draft? Why don't we bring in four local coaches, have them watch a practice, and then draft teams, and then play out a mini tournament? And so the idea just took off. The
Wow.
coaches that we brought on had a vision for this too. They really liked the idea of the draft, and we used an athletes unlimited style draft situation where there was a snake draft, and the four coaches were Megan Lucas from Butler High School here in Western Pennsylvania, Tom Phillips from Freeport High School, whose legendary career at Freeport High School. We also had Eve Hebrank from Leechburg, and Rachel Carter from Franklin Regional. And all four coaches have their own unique connection to Ellen, which was kind of cool. Eve and Rachel both played for Ellen, and so they're part of Ellen's coaching tree. Megan was a coach at Kiski before Ellen, so she's moved on to Butler, but she coached at Kiski area. And Tom Phillips and Ellen had many a dust up in high school volleyball and in junior high volleyball here in Western Pennsylvania, and just adore each other and really enjoyed the common love for the game. And so the four coaches made a lot of sense. We brought a fifth coach in, Dakota, and he ran the practice for us so that the coaches would be free to make notes. And anyway, it's going to be our main fundraiser this year. We raised over $5,000 doing it. We know that we'll do better if we do it again, because this was the first year, and we learned a lot about what you can do and what you maybe shouldn't do. And I'm excited to do it again. It was so much fun. And if you'll let me, I'll tell you my favorite part. You
Yeah.
good?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So 19 schools get to send two players, and some of the schools decided that some of the players had moved on to play basketball after the state tournament was over and were busy with other things, and so they decided they weren't going to send people. But so it gave us the opportunity to kind of craft the perfect situation with enough middles, enough setters, enough liberos, enough D-specs, to make sure that we had everything we needed to do this the right way. But some of the schools weren't as successful, and some of them were newer to volleyball here in Western Pennsylvania, and they were allowed to send kids too. And one of the kids came into the gym for practice, and you could tell that she felt like a fish out of water. She didn't feel like, what am I doing here? This is ridiculous. I'm here with kids that are going to go on to play college volleyball. What am I doing here? And so I was ready for it. There was something, again, the observer in me took charge. And I started to watch how she moved through the group. And she was shy and timid, and didn't really want to really get too involved. She was frightened. She was a little scared and intimidated. And so I watched this practice started, and Coach Dakota said, "Hey, girls, I know you guys have played against each other. You play club with each other. Introduced yourselves with each other, and let's make sure that we're all familiar." And so all the girls turn, and they all just happen to turn away from this young girl. And this young girl's bouncing from group to group, trying to get in there and be part of it, but she still feels a little outside. And so she was listed as a setter, and Tom Phillips, the crafty veteran that he is, his first pick in the draft is his own setter, and he knows her well. He knows what she can do, and then he ends up picking this young girl. And as the day progressed, you could see her go from this shy, timid person, player, into this. Tom gave her a job to do, and she performed it very admirably. And she became part of a team for the first time. Her high school career, she probably won 2 matches in her 3 years as a high school volleyball player. But her team won the championship of our event. And by the end of it, she was high-fiving, slapping hands, coming into that huddle, and it just was such a cool turnaround from what I witnessed when this young girl first came into the gym. And I was so proud to give her this opportunity to feel like she belonged in this group, in this elite Pennsylvania group of volleyball players, and be a part of it and have a job to do and do it. And so, of all the things we did, I could throw the $5,000 out the window. I don't care about it. I witnessed what I wanted to witness. I got to see this young girl have that great team experience that maybe she was lacking.
That's our sport. That's what we're looking for is
Yeah.
um, is building those connections. Um, Steve, what else do you have for us? I think we're sort of butting up against our hour. So
Yeah,
is there
well,
any
we've got
business?
about 6 or 7 minutes left if we want to use it, but we have no requirement one way or another. But when we started, I think it's these stories. It's the human piece of it. We talk about it a lot, and I think it's a little bit unfair to the girls and women's game because I've coached kind of half and half, but my latest stuff is on the boys' side, and as competitive as it is, sometimes we put the stereotype on the girls or women's game of not sharing as much, and I don't really think that's necessarily the case. I mean, you're going to run into a coach or a club that's insular, but my experience on both sides, maybe a little bit more on the boys' side, and maybe because we're growing and we're trying to get established in a lot of places, there's a little more openness. But it's nice to see and hear stories about how we help people develop relationships. And as BJ knows, BJ's like a wonderful with people. That's why I do the technical stuff behind this and live vicariously through BJ's connections with everybody. And it's a selfish thing, but I've learned, every week I learn a lot. And we were just kicking it around. Last week, I remember I said, yeah, we're episode 46. And he's like, 46? Wow. But we get to meet people and hear their stories about what they do, and to see what getting a ball rolling, bad pun in here, but or bad, to see an adverse event get such good things rolling, because we take them as I think about when my dad went through cancer, and he was going through all this difficult stuff, and I asked him one day, and he goes, how's it, how are you getting through all this? He goes, what am I going to do? and that lives in the back of my brain. It's like, yeah, I guess you just got to keep going, and put one foot in front of the other. But some people don't, and it's nice to see when that happens. When Mike put one foot in front of the other, even though they weren't his, and you moving forward with this, I think it's great stuff. And then having athletes do that. I occasionally I ran into a mom, um, at the Minneapolis qualifier, and it's like 5 years after I coached her daughter, and she said, "Oh yeah, yeah, Sierra says hello." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Tell Steve that you know if I hadn't had my head so far up my ass 5 years ago, I would have realized what he was trying to do for me." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll take it." She's a good productive adult moving forward in her life. And yeah, it was a little weird when we were together because she was going through a rough time. So thanks for
But she got
sharing
what she
these.
needed.
Yeah,
She got what she needed. It just was late for what you were trying to do, but it was right on time for what
yeah,
she needed to do.
yeah, yeah. And that's why we coach.
It sure is.
Really? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's wrap
thanks
it
for
up,
sharing.
Steve.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks for sharing with us, Tim. And I really appreciate you being with us and meeting you. So hopefully, anybody who's watching this or listening to this when we get the podcast out, if you're so inclined, weservefirst.org, or I notice jamthegym.com is another good place to go. And
They both go to the same place.
yeah,
They
so
both
go
go to the
there.
same place. Yeah.
Go there. There's some great stories. There's some great background. And if you're so inclined to help the cause, help the cause. And we'll see you. Hopefully, maybe I'll see you at AVCA next year. But in the meantime, BJ, it's been great. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, guys. The hour went fast. Thanks for
It
everything.
always does.